Welcome back to another episode of the Beyond the Arc podcast. Today we're going to be going through some NBA talk, of course, with the NBA season right around the corner. So if you do enjoy this content, do me a huge favor, smash the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, comment down below on your MVP this upcoming season, as we're going to be going through predicting possible MVPs, Defensive Player of the Year, all the awards. So without further ado, let's get right on into this. So starting, I got both ESPN betting odds, and then I'm also going to talk about my personal prediction and give some dark horses as well. So let's just start with the ESPN bet odds. They got Jokic, of course, at plus 215. So he's got the best odds to win MVP. This is the best Denver Nuggets team he's had in his career. I mean, they went ahead and they shipped Michael Porter Jr. over to the Brooklyn Nets in exchange to grab a prime, not necessarily a guy that doesn't need the ball in his hands in Cam Johnson, a guy that is going to be this 3-and-D wing that's going to help them out quite a lot. And then it opened up enough money to bring in some vets to come off the bench, as last season they really lacked that depth that they needed. That's why Game 7 against Oklahoma City, they kind of just crumbled. They didn't win, because they lacked that depth versus Oklahoma City had ample depth. So similar thought process of when you were looking to beat every champion, it is why not mimic what they do in order to beat them, if that makes sense. So the Thunder, for example, have ample depth at every position. They were able to, if Chet was missing time, they were still able to win games because they had the Isaiah Hartensteins over there. They had the Jalen Williams. If Shea had to miss a couple games, you had the Cason Wallace in the backfield. In the backcourt. Same thing with Alex Caruso there as well. Ample opportunity for many, many guys to play on the court. So that's why Jokic could possibly have this huge jump. Not huge jump, sorry. It's kind of crazy to say a huge jump for the best player in the NBA. But Jokic could have another MVP caliber season because although he has the best possible roster he's had thus far in his career, he doesn't have superstars next to him. It's not like we're talking about the Celtics here where it's Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, who are both top 20 players in the NBA. We're talking about, is Jamal Murray a top 20 player? He's probably right around that area of between 15 and 25 is what I would probably say. But like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are elite basketball players. Both have multiple All-Stars, All-NBA appearances, etc. Jamal Murray, though, has yet to crack an All-Star game. So, yes, the roster is really talented, but it's really talented also because of Nikola Jokic. So he's just going to elevate this roster that much more. This is where I don't think that Shea will repeat. He's number 2 in ESPN betting odds, but the team is just so good around him. Jalen Williams, he's potential all-star. Chet Holmgren, people have him ranked of all centers in like the top 5 area, top 8 area in the league already, which is kind of nuts. But I think that Shea, of course, is always going to have odds to win MVP, and it's always possible. But I just don't think this season he's going to do it. Next up is Luka Doncic at plus 440. I could see a world where, yes, he does win an MVP, but the Lakers got to do something before we even talk about that. We've always, he's made the NBA Finals finally in his career, but at the same time, like I feel as if with the Lakers, because it's a new team, he's got to get over a hump on top of that. So making a Western Conference Finals appearance or an NBA Finals appearance would really help his case in winning an MVP. Good odds that I like here for MVP. Of course, we could be looking way down this list here. Way down this list, Joel Embiid, of course, he's won MVP before. Do I see him winning an MVP again? No. But I'm saying with crazy odds, like plus 15,000, it might make sense to throw a couple bucks at Joel Embiid, right? Steph Curry is another guy. Dark horse MVP candidate. Of course, the Warriors just locked the 1 seed somehow like that. I don't see it happening, but dark horse MVP. I want to talk about Paolo Banchero because the Magic roster, they went out and they fixed some issues that they previously had this last season, being they bring in Desmond Bane, another scorer and a stretch 3-point shooter that can really help them. That's what this team lacked, was 3-point shooting last season. This might help unlock Paolo Banchero. So I could see a world where he could be a dark horse MVP because of obviously he dominates the floor. He's like a mix between a Carmelo Anthony and his footwork is impeccable. And I think if he were on a team like the Knicks, the Celtics, the Lakers, who have a huge market, he would be a lot more well known. But because he plays for the Magic and they don't get nearly as many primetime games as some of these other teams, I think that's where he kind of gets lost in the sauce, if that makes sense. But if you watch Paolo play, he's a dominant athlete. I mean, he's this 6'10" power forward that has these guard-like skills, but he has post footwork like a big man. And yeah, overall, like I think he could definitely be a dark horse MVP. Another guy that, this might have a little bias because I'm a Celtics fan, but Jaylen Brown genuinely plus 25,000 seems like he could have potential, especially if they start off the season pretty hot and the Celtics are, 1 or 2 seed within the first 25 games. And then they're like, oh, we can kind of make a move because they lack a center right now, right? It's like Nemenis Queta, I think, is the starting center for the Celtics. So when you lack that, but maybe they go make a move. Maybe they go talk to Brooklyn about Nicholas Claxton. Maybe they go talk to Utah about Walker Kessler. I don't know. Maybe even Minnesota about Rudy Gobert. Something like that, especially if Jaylen Brown is killing it and they're looking like they're just one piece away being a center without Tatum. I'm not saying that this is going to happen. This is all hypothetical, of course. And when it comes to dark horse MVP, it has to be hypothetical because of course it's dark horse. It's unlikely to happen, but it possibly could. Of course you have the Jokic's, the Sheas, the Lukas, the Giannis, etc. They're always going to be atop that MVP chain. But if somebody's going to take that throne, that's what I'm talking about here. Is if Jaylen Brown, Paolo Banchero, Steph Curry, and I got one more name I'll get to here in a second. If those guys, just go out there, they ball out, they lead their team, number 1 seed in their conference, and they're dominating the game, averaging 30, like the rest of those guys, Jokic, Shea, Luka, then why shouldn't they be in that MVP candidate? Like, if Jaylen Brown is averaging 30, he is to the Celtics what Shea would be to the Thunder. Like right this upcoming season, if he averages 30, of course. Now, you could say that about any player, but I'm saying the Thunder have a lot of depth, or maybe you use Jokic as a good example instead of the Thunder. So Jokic last season didn't have a lot of depth. This season, the Celtics aren't going to have a ton, right? Of course, there's going to be a ton of depth in the guard position, but the big man position lacks it quite a lot. Guys like Nemenis Queta, Xavier Tillman, etc., rocking it for the Celtics at the big man position at the 4 and the 5. Tatum not going to make a comeback, so this gives the Celtics an ample opportunity to look at the bright side of the season and say, hey, we have an opportunity here to really see what Jaylen Brown's full potential is. Do we see him as this MVP candidate? He already won Finals MVP once. So who says he can't be our number 1 guy? This could really hurt Tatum's future with the Celtics. Do I think he's going anywhere? Absolutely not. As a Celtics fan, I think you just got to run it until it dies. And you had some flaws this last season with dying by the 3-point line, and I think there's some adjustments that are going to be made this season because of that. But I'm saying that Jaylen Brown has an opportunity here to prove that he's a number 1 option, and by being another number 1 option, he could be in the MVP category. My last name I want to talk about for MVP category is Trae Young. Trae Young, obviously on this Hawks team, that he is the system, right? This could be a Steve Nash-esque MVP where without Steve Nash, the Phoenix Suns were not going to be compatible at all. But Nash was like the glue guy. And yeah, say whatever you want about Nash's MVP, whether Kobe deserved it or whatever. I'm not here to debate that. But Trae Young has an opportunity where he's going to have one of the best defenses in the NBA around him. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Dyson Daniels, Ricochet is over there too. Just a lot of good, solid defenders that are going to be menaces that create ample opportunity for Trae to score and Trae to pass the ball like crazy. The transition game is probably going to be top 5, top 10 in the NBA this upcoming season for the Hawks, because I'm assuming Dyson Daniels is going to get a lot of steals. Right, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, guys that are going to be protecting the paint like Onyeka Okongwu and Kristaps Porzingis. And then we get to see, what is this, year 2 of Ricochet? So it's going to be a good season for the Hawks. And if they take this massive jump, why can't Trae Young be in that category of MVP? Dark horse MVP, yes. Plus 20,000 right now on ESPN NBA odds. But he fits in that category of a Jaylen Brown or a Steph Curry or Paolo, where not necessarily the best team around him, but if he puts this team on his back, he could do something with the roster. So let's go and talk a little bit about the Rookie of the Year. There's obviously one name that totally stands out. Everyone's expecting this to happen, and it being Cooper Flagg, right? He literally has minus 225 odds on ESPN for a reason. He looks fluid. The game seems to be coming to him very easily. I'm excited to see what this Mavs supporting cast can do for him. And now that they're even starting games with him at point guard, and now with that, with Kyrie out, not saying that Kyrie out is a good thing for Cooper Flagg, because I think Kyrie could bring a lot to Flagg's game, but for your rookie season, you're basically going to get the green light to just kind of rock out and go out there and just ball. And the game just feels like he feels so comfortable on the court. He doesn't feel scared to have the ball in his hands, which is crazy for a guy that he's still a kid. This guy was just at Duke, and then he plays against Team USA, and now he's the number 1 pick in the NBA draft, and he has to play next to Anthony Davis, Klay Thompson. Like, it's not a normal situation where we see Cade Cunningham get drafted to the Pistons, and they don't really have a lot going on over there when he first got drafted there. It's not Victor Wembanyama with the Spurs, where they didn't really have a whole lot of talent around him. It's Cooper Flagg with the Mavs, where they have a top 3 power forward in the league, if fully healthy, Anthony Davis. They have depth, Gafford, Lively. They have shooting, Klay Thompson. They went and got out other pieces too, D'Angelo Russell. They've got weapons here that are really going to help Cooper Flagg just immediately start off and get playoff experience. It's similar to when Tatum came in the league, right? The Celtics were immediately in conference final after conference final after conference final, right? That's why he's only 28 and he's been to the conference finals 5 or 6 times, right? It's immaculate. And I could see that for Cooper Flagg, where he could be the number 1 option on a team that's just consistently at the top of the West. Year 1, I have no expectation for his playoff performance or anything like that, like where the Mavs can be. If they end up being the 10 seed, great. If they end up being the 2 seed, great. I think that's a successful season regardless, because I'm assuming we're going to deal with some injuries. The Mavs are going to deal with some injuries. I'm assuming that things are going to happen, and it's a tough Western Conference. So Cooper Flagg obviously is the main guy over there that I would be looking at and being like, yeah, Rookie of the Year. Sure. Some dark horses, though. I really like VJ Edgecombe and what he might be able to do for the Sixers. Paul George being a kind of guy at this point in his career who has a decent injury history report, meaning he might be off the court. And if he's off the court, there's one less person to take the ball away from VJ Edgecombe. Joel Embiid, same thing. Injury history is through the roof. We all know it. We don't know what to expect out of him. So He could play 60 games or he could play 23 games. We don't know. So VJ Edgecombe could rock out that way. So for a guy like that, I mean, seems like the ball could be in his hands a decent amount if injuries do occur. Now, I'm not wishing that on the Sixers. Of course not. But also, similar to the Mavs, the Sixers, because they had a lot of injuries, they do have an opportunity here where they've got a lot of pieces. Embiid, Paul George, VJ Edgecombe, Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain when he comes back. Right? Like, there's pieces here that give, when fully healthy, VJ Edgecombe, there's no expectation if they're all fully healthy for him to be the number one option. Right? But there's opportunity for him to have a solid season too. And then if he is, in that rookie of the year candidacy, I would say that it would be because there are injuries around him. That's all I'm saying. Other guys that I think dark horse. This is like dark horse. Nique Clifford, we got to talk about. He looked pretty good there for the Sacramento Kings in Summer League. The issue I have with Nique Clifford's game is it's the situation he's in, not his game itself. Nique Clifford is stuck in a situation where they have Malik Monk, Russell Westbrook, Dennis Schroeder, DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Keegan Murray, Sabonis. So, although this team should be tanking, they're not going to be. A successful season for the Kings should be bottom of the West. And bottom of the West without trying. Like, I want to deep dive. Now that we've gotten to Nique Clifford, let's deep dive a little bit in the Sacramento Kings and talk about how they're in this terrible spot. Right? They don't have super fun, exciting young talent. Nique Clifford is a name, sure. And if he thrives, great. But he wasn't a top 5 pick, for example. The expectation of him is not what it is for like Cooper Flagg or VJ Edgecombe. So with that, they also have so much money tied up into guys like Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Sabonis. And I understand, and now they just re-signed Keegan Murray also. And I understand tying money into Sabonis because he is your brightest spot on the team. I do think that the money that is tied into Keegan Murray could be just to make contracts match in the future. And I think that he could be the key to fixing this roster. Because I think the trade deadline rolls around, you need to ship out one, if not both, DeRozan and LaVine. I don't know where the Kings got this idea that it didn't work with Chicago, it can work with us. That makes no sense to me. Right? So you trade DeMar. Let's say you get, I don't know. Let's say you talk to the Lakers and you go and make a deal for Keegan Murray for Austin Reeves, right? This is obviously contractually, it needs to add up and all that good stuff. Probably need to bring in a third team for salary cap reasons, whole 9 yards. But just a bare minimum, like bare bones of the trade would be Austin Reeves goes to Sacramento, Keegan Murray goes to the Lakers. The Lakers need a 3-and-D wing. That's exactly what Keegan Murray provides. Then you bring in Austin Reeves. I understand it's another guard. What I'm saying is then this is before the deadline. Hopefully by then, Russell Westbrook will have proved his worth to kind of rock out and go and be traded at the deadline to a more competitive roster. So then you look at like the Sixers, who are going to need depth behind, injury-prone Joel Embiid, injury-prone Paul George. So you bring in Russell Westbrook, who can come off the bench, and then you bring in like a DeMar DeRozan there so that their bench is solidified, right? And I'm just saying this is just to accumulate, to get off the books of those big name, expensive DeMar DeRozan. I know Russell Westbrook's on a vet minimum, but expensive DeMar DeRozan, get rid of him. I mean, it's just brutal because there is no bright future for Sacramento. So then your most valuable assets are Keegan Murray and, of course, Sabonis, right? And maybe Nate Clifford if he balls out. So what I'm saying is you kind of gut the roster and you let Nate Clifford rock out, and that's where he could potentially be in that Rookie of the Year candidacy. Guys I don't like for Rookie of the Year. I got to talk about Dylan Harper. I know he's third in MVP odds at plus 1,300. It's not MVP, sorry. Third in Rookie of the Year odds. But I don't think he's going to have such great opportunity with San Antonio year one. Because you have, of course, Stephon Castle, and you have De'Aaron Fox. And you paid De'Aaron Fox a lot of money. And the only reason he might have more opportunity would be like an injury, or let's say in theory Fox gets traded, but I don't see that happening. Now, Dylan Harper brings in solid depth at this roster. Also, I'm bigger on a teammate of his being Rookie of the Year versus Dylan Harper, but I'll get to him in just a second. Dylan Harper, I just think the ball's not going to be in his hands. I think that it's going to be in Fox's hands and it's going to be in Stephon Castle's hands. And then, of course, next would be Victor Wembanyama. They're going to be focusing on Victor Wembanyama. They're going to be focusing on their stars in Vic and De'Aaron Fox. And Stephon Castle, it's year two. I think he's going to take a big leap. Most improved player, possibly. But yeah, Dylan Harper, I'm not super high on. One other guy on the flip side, I'm super high on that could possibly be Rookie of the Year. I loved the energy I saw out of Carter Bryant. Carter Bryant pick 14. He's not even on the top, 20? The top 20 odds of Rookie of the Year. Super sleeper pick for Rookie of the Year would be Carter Bryant. I think he's got this great, phenomenal defensive game. This defensive game could be like equivalent to a Kawhi Leonard, right? Hopefully the offensive game comes with it, but he doesn't need to focus on that right now. He needs to focus on that defensive side of the ball because he's not going to be asked to score, but he's going to be asked to defend. And if he wants playtime, that's where you gain that playtime as you lock in and you put all your energy into that defensive side of the ball, get those steals, get running out in transition, you're getting easy points on the board. This Spurs team's going to be fun. For sure. I think they're going to be a good team to watch. I think they need to take a leap, right? Get at least close to the actual playoffs, but make the play-in, right? 8 seed, somewhere around there. 6 seed, hopefully. But yeah, that's another guy I like is Carter Bryant for Rookie of the Year. And I like that they don't have odds on him on ESPN because that means it is through the roof. It is a 100% a flyer. Just like how I talk about a lot on this channel, the broke boy bet, this would be one I would be talking about. Would be something like that. Last but not least for Rookie of the Year, I'm going to give one that I like and one that I don't like. One that I don't like, Kon Knueppel. I think he's going to have a solid NBA career, right? He could be a guy kind of like a three-point sniper-esque, a JJ Redick, a Kyle Korver, something like that. I think that's what his game is going to be, right? Lacks on the defensive side of the ball, but solid three-point sniper that you just either you run him with the second unit or you let him rock with like Marco Bellinelli is a good example of what Kon Knueppel could be, I think. I just don't see that as Rookie of the Year, but especially with Charlotte got to figure their stuff out. I've talked about that ample time on this channel, but not going to go into that right now. But Kon Knueppel specifically, I think he's going to have a solid season. I could see him averaging about in between 9 and 12 points, shooting 40% from three. Sure. But I think there's just going to be more players ahead of him performing better. That's why I wouldn't bet on him specifically. And then one last guy that I like is Walter Clayton Jr. from Florida, now on the Utah Jazz. Why? It's because the Utah Jazz have zero expectations. They're going to be just throwing guys out there to test the waters to see what they really have here, who they really can keep as a solid piece to play around. but ultimately they're going to be a bad, rough team. So that gives all the opportunity in the world for a guy who literally led a team to the championship in the NCAA. So Walter Clayton Jr., I mean, already looks like a leader, looked decent in Summer League, whole 9 yards, but him specifically, I think he could have a good explosive outbreak, especially at plus 5,000. There's opportunity there as a broke boy bet to be looking at. I could throw a couple bucks on it. If it loses, so what? If it wins, I'm cashing out big. Let's talk about Defensive Player of the Year. There's obviously some easy, obvious answers. Victor Wembanyama minus 165. I'm surprised that Evan Mobley's lower than Chet Holmgren because I would put Evan Mobley at 2. But so obviously Victor Wembanyama we think is going to win Defensive Player of the Year. I would be on consensus with that from ESPN. Other guys that I could see taking it would be Evan Mobley, of course. Giannis is plus 6,600, and he's won a Defensive Player of the Year before. So that seems like a pretty good sleeper bet right there. I think if Walker Kessler gets traded over to Lakers, over to Boston or something like that, him at plus 6,600, pretty solid bet to lock in there. I think the reason it's so low is because he's on the Utah Jazz right now. So that's where I would probably avoid putting a bet on him until... I mean, it's tough because it's like, obviously, when you put the bet on him, you want it to where he's still on the Jazz and then hope he gets traded. And hope he gets traded enough to where there's enough games left in the season he can prove that he's the Defensive Player of the Year. And he's got to start off the season for Utah really good as well. Like, I'm talking average at least like 2 blocks a game, something like that. Be at the top of the league in blocks per game, rebounds per game, etc. And then hopefully you get traded to a contender, somebody like a Lakers, or I think Boston are 2 good fits for him. Somebody that just kind of needs that center. Golden State would be another good one, although they just picked up Al Horford. I don't think you can go wrong by a Kuminga for Walker Kessler kind of swap, something like that. Other guys that we're talking about that I really like at Defensive Player of the Year, I would be talking about Dyson Daniels. I mean, Marcus Smart won it a few years back. Why can't another guard wing win it in Dyson Daniels, who literally averaged like 3 steals a year last season? The Thompson twins, I think, should be in consideration. Also, I think both Thompson twins at that. Ausar started off his career with a little bit of injuries, so that's why he hasn't taken that jump like Amen. Amen is elite. I think Ausar could be right there too, though, just at a slower timeline. Amen Thompson's issue with winning Defensive Player of the Year is going to be the fact that he's going to be surrounded by other solid defenders. Kevin Durant being a solid defender, Steven Adams being a plus defender, players like that. So it's tough to win a Defensive Player of the Year when you have great defenders around you, right? That's why Giannis at plus 6,600 seems like it could be a decent bet because Brook Lopez is gone, right? Yeah, Miles Turner's going to be there to block shots and everything, but he's not a great rebounder. So Giannis blocks some shots, he rebounds the ball, and the Bucks are towards the top of the East. Seems like a good bet to me. Miles Turner at plus 10,000. I mean, I don't love that, but Rudy Gobert at plus 10,000, though, also a good, solid bet. In my opinion, he's won Defensive Player of the Year before. What's stopping him from replicating those seasons and competing with a Victor Wembanyama head-to-head and just winning another Defensive Player of the Year? I think that that's a possibility for sure. Most improved player. At the top of this list, there's guys like Amen Thompson, which seems like a pretty good bet right there. I just talked about his brother, though, Ausar. I think Ausar at plus 1,800 seems like a pretty solid bet for him to have most improved, because I could see him having the biggest jump to jumping towards his brother. Reed Shepherd is somebody that is a dark horse most improved player, being that Fred VanVleet is going to be out for the season. Right, so Reed is going to need to step up. I think he can shoot the lights out for sure. The question is just going to be, can he play defense? I mean, at least equivalent of like a TJ McConnell. If he could play, because comparable in height, And obviously, Reed is the better offensive player from a shooting standpoint. TJ McConnell right now is a better playmaker. But if Reed can put in the effort on the defensive side of the ball that TJ McConnell does, where, yeah, he's a little undersized, but he just fights through every screen and fights whenever he can, that will really help his defensive game. But plus 2,500, I mean, that seems like a pretty solid bet to make. I know a lot of people have talked about Andrew Nembhard. I just don't think the Pacers are going to be good this year. Like, they're not going to be a top 5 team in the East. And I know you're talking, I just brought up Asar Thompson, who possibly could be on a Detroit team that I have high hopes for. I think they're going to be like a 4 seed. But obviously they could fall out of the top 5 also. Most improved player, I think you kind of have to talk about Michael Porter Jr. a little bit because his numbers are going to be a bit inflated because he's on the Brooklyn Nets. There's going to be no reason he can't average 20 points per game. There's going to be no reason he can't average like 25 a game. What, he's going to be passing the ball to who? Cam Thomas? Sure. But Michael Porter Jr. don't pass. So if he's just rocking out as a number 1 option for the Brooklyn Nets, he's averaging this 25, 28 points per game. Do I think that's going to happen? No. But there's an opportunity, dark horse bet right there, of Michael Porter Jr. being most improved player. Last but not least, I think because of lack of centers, and like I kind of stated before at the beginning of this video, the Jaylen Brown being that number 1 option, most improved player could go to Queta. Neemias, however you say his name, Neemias Queta, could be most improved player. Plus 5,000. I mean, it's literally a flyer bet. Sure. But if he goes out there and averages like 15 and 10, just on pick and rolls, he's just getting lobs and all that all day, shoot. And of course, as the season progresses, he'll get better. Why not? Because he could have the biggest jump. Like, I just want to see Neemias Queta's stats, right? Like, in his last season, he averaged 5 points a game and 3 rebounds, playing 13 minutes. If he goes up to this 30-minute per game kind of guy, and then he averages, let's say, yeah, like I said, 15 points and 9 rebounds, 10 rebounds, he's averaging a double-double, and he has good efficiency and all that. I mean, his entire career, he's never averaged 5.5, like over 5.5 points per game, over 5 rebounds a game. But if he's the starting center for the Celtics, and he is, like I said, 15 and 10, for a starting center, seems very doable on a team that there is 0 expectations here. There's 0 expectations for them to perform at a super high level. So they're probably going to be testing out what they got with these other players that didn't touch the floor a lot. I just think that those odds, like I said, we have to really reiterate here before I get flamed in the comments, that these are dark horse, like bottom, like flyer bets, broke boy bets kind of thing. So next up here, Clutch Player of the Year. Clutch Player of the Year, at odds, they have Kevin Durant at the top. I think that we got to be talking about Cade Cunningham, though. There's 2 guys here. I'm thinking Clutch Player of the Year. Cade Cunningham plus 2,000 seems like a pretty safe bet. Jalen Brunson seemed like another one, but for dark horse flyers, Cade Cunningham seems like a really solid bet for a guy that takes over games, number 1 option on his team. 4th quarter hits, 30 seconds to go, you're getting him the ball. Obvious. Another guy, Paolo Banchero. Talked about him before with possible dark horse MVP. With that, could be Clutch Player of the Year because he would be elevating this team that much more, being able to go out there. And yeah, like I just said about Cade Cunningham, the elite guard forward-esque that both of them are, they're able to have the ball in their hands. They're not scared to take the last shot, and they're number 1 option on their teams. Right? Guys like De'Aaron Fox have won it before. I'm not putting my money on it. DeMar DeRozan's won it before. I'm not putting my money on that either. But a guy like, why can't, Shea is at plus 3,300. That seems like pretty good odds for a guy that is a possible MVP, that just won the MVP, just won finals MVP. Why can't he win clutch player of the year also? Yeah, typically it doesn't go to those teams that are top of their conference and all that, but still, there's an opportunity here for Shea to win that clutch player of the year. Guys that I would be fading. Luka, I think, would be somebody I would not be looking at. I think they're just not at that point Luka is great in the fourth quarter. Don't get me wrong. And the definition by clutch player would just need to be examined, because Luka's clutch in the entire fourth quarter, not just the last 2 minutes. Anthony Edwards is somebody that I would probably avoid, just because I think others, like Anthony Edwards, I think is a phenomenal basketball player. I probably should have mentioned him in the MVP conversation. Anthony Edwards, though, I think the games are going to be sealed before he needs to be, that superhero. And this is also regular season awards. I think in the playoffs is when he has that clutch gene. So let's talk about Coach of the Year, though. Coach of the Year, Jamal Mosley is at the top there. But I want to talk about some lesser known or lesser odds guys. I think Chauncey Billups for the Trailblazers could be in consideration. If Scoot takes another leap, you have Drew Holiday over there. You've got Deni Avdija. You got Donovan Clingan going to be taking over that full starting position for the center position. I think that is an opportunity for them to take a decent leap, right? Anywhere from like that. I think they can go from being that bottom of the West kind of guy to more of a in the play-in, 9, 10, 9, 8 seed, somewhere in there. And if they take that leap and then Dame comes back, why can't Chauncey Billups be Coach of the Year? An interesting one is to talk about Darko. The coach of the Raptors could be somebody that wins a dark horse, because we don't really know what to expect. We don't know what to expect with the Raptors this upcoming season, because they don't really have an identity. They, of course, have Scotty Barnes being their guy, their number one option. But how do the other guys fit? Does Brandon Ingram fit alongside Scotty Barnes and guys like Grady Dick and RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley? It almost looks on paper like they don't fit together. All of them. That somebody's going to be the odd man out. Most likely it's going to be RJ Barrett, because I think Brandon Ingram and Scotty Barnes are actually going to fit quite well together. I don't know if RJ Barrett fits that with them. So I do like Chauncey Billups' odds as well as Darko's odds, plus 1,400 and plus 2,000. Another coach that I would be looking at, Rick Carlisle at plus 2,800, because Tyrese Halliburton's not there. If they're still able to be competitive with Andrew Nembhard filling that role, Pascal Siakam being there, whole 9 yards, I think that could be a pretty decent, if they have a pretty decent season, especially with Miles Turner gone, why can't he be Coach of the Year? If they keep a similar float there, not necessarily number one in the East, but like, let's say they're a top 5 team in the East, with the stuff that they've been through, and no Miles Turner, who was your best defensive asset, most likely, one of the best defensive assets on the roster. You don't have Tyrese Halliburton, your literal system player. Andrew Nembhard is in a most improved player kind of category. Pascal Siakam, all NBA category. And then you get to see what you have out of guys like Jarris Walker, Jay Huff, right? So that gives opportunity here for somebody like a Rick Carlisle to go rock out and win Coach of the Year. So I think there's a lot of interesting awards here that could be won. I want to do an episode on NFL awards also, so be sure to stay tuned for that as well. But Again, guys, I want to know, let's have a discussion in the comments. Do you agree with these? Do you disagree? Let's talk it out. Again, a lot of these picks were dark horse. So keep that in mind before you just say, hey, oh, it's ridiculous to pick somebody like Paolo to win MVP over Jokic. I'm not picking Paolo over Jokic. I'm just saying there's a world where he could win the MVP. And I explained that world. So before you watch the entire episode, before you just flame me in the comments, is what I'm saying. So without further ado, it's been another Beyond the Arc episode. Do me a favor, drop a like, drop a sub. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.